We have so much to cover today. There is a lot to it, but you will see that the process is fairly straightforward. Let me just quickly put this on presentation mode. Okay, great. All right, my name is Bonnie Horowitz, and I work for College Access Fairfax. We are a nonprofit partner of Fairfax County Public Schools, and I work with students to help them complete FAFSA. I work with their families as well, and we are really here to make sure that students do what they need to do to get financial aid for college. We also are a great resource for scholarship information and for some other information about some of the other forms that students need to do to apply to college. So let's begin. So essentially, the financial aid process has 5 steps. We're probably going to be getting through steps 1, 2, and 3 tonight, and I'll go through those. Don't worry too much about steps 4 and 5 because College Access Fairfax has separate presentations open to the community, which we're going to hold virtually, where we're going to cover 4 and 5 in more detail. So first of all, we're going to go through step 1, where you and your student, and I think I may have a student or two with us, are going to secure an FSA ID. The student has to get an FSA ID, and one parent should get an FSA ID. It does not have to be both parents. That is a username and password that you are going to use every year you do FAFSA. So FAFSA is not something you just do one time and you are all done. You need to do it every year. So first we'll talk about how you go about getting that ID. Then we're going to talk about completing the FAFSA form, which if you have all of your information together can take as little as a half an hour. It's not that detailed. The CSS profile we'll also discuss, and that is a much more detailed form. And then we'll talk about the paperwork and the information you're going to get back after you complete your FAFSA, called the Student Aid Report, and what that means. So first of all, a student would say, well, which of my parents should fill out FAFSA? In general, it can be either. This is a little chart that you can go to the government website for FAFSA. And if you have a more, some students have a situation where either the parents might be divorced and it's not as straightforward. This is actually a really good flow chart for helping figure out who should be the parent when you fill out your FAFSA. Now, a lot of parents say, well, if I don't declare my student on my taxes, can they file independently? It is extremely difficult to qualify as a student to file independently without your parent information. You would need to be 24 years old or married or in the military. It's really nearly all students need to fill out the FAFSA with their parent. So first of all, not all students can qualify to secure federal aid. A student has to have a social security number or a permanent resident or green card number. So the people who are qualified to fill out as students are either US citizens or what we call eligible non-citizens. So that would be a student who has a green card, a student who has achieved asylum and has been actually formally granted asylum, not just in application. So that's a question that we can help your students answer. I'm a college access financial aid champion. So what that means is I work one-on-one with students, as do others. And Kristen Mayhew is your financial aid representative at your school, and she would work one-on-one with your students to make sure that they can determine if they are eligible to apply for FAFSA. The parent does not need to have a social security number or green card number to help their student complete FAFSA. In that case, the parent would just need to print out the signature form at the end of FAFSA and mail it in through the US Postal Service. And it's not an unusual thing. We are used to that situation. So as long as the student qualifies, we can get the process done. Okay, so if you have a student who is a DACA student are not eligible to apply for FAFSA nor secure an FSAID. We do have a list of scholarships that are for those students that they can look into. And NOVA currently has a brand new page on their website for dreamers and for others who would not qualify for federal aid. So the first thing you do is create your FSAID. In order to do that, we need to have, the student needs a personal email address. That means it's not their Fairfax County public school email address. They usually create one that's for all of their college things, for colleges, for scholarships, and for FAFSA. They'll create a username and password that they will need to put somewhere and remember it and keep track of it. We'll need the student's name, their date of birth. We'll need either their social security number or their A number, depending on the documentation that shows that they're eligible to apply. And they're going to set up challenge questions so that if there is some reason that they need to get back into their account, if they've lost their password, they'll be able to answer these questions and get back in, their security questions. One parent will establish an FSAID if they're able to do so. And again, if you do not have a social security number or a green card number, your student can still complete FAFSA. So the parent and student just need to keep their IDs in a secure location, something, a place that you will know where they are next fall when you do this again. So there's two ways to complete the FAFSA form, two locations. One is a website, and you can see at the bottom, we have the link, it's https://fafsa.gov. There's also a phone app. Now, I will say that the website is sometimes a little glitchy. Sometimes it works fine, and sometimes it is not, sometimes it has some issues. The phone app, in my experience, has been working great. I do have many students who are using the phone app, and they are able to share their screen with me through a Zoom session or through Google Meet. It's no problem at all. I find that it works really quite well, and really we can do it either way. When you're brand new to the process, you originally will click the Start Here button. If you finish part of the FAFSA, you don't get it done, you'll be a returning user. Right, or you'll be using that again next year. So there are several pieces of information that if you have them ready to go, or your student has them ready to go, we can get a lot done in a FAFSA support session. So again, you need those IDs we discussed. You need the social security numbers of the student and the parent, or the permanent resident green card numbers. The student driver's license number is optional. You can complete FAFSA without it. It's really up to the family whether or not they want to share that. We also need a list of the schools that your student will be applying to or plans to apply to. The student can enter 10 at one time. If they have more than that, they need to wait just a little bit to make sure that their schools have uploaded their FAFSA information, and then they can go in and add more schools. They need the dates of birth of themselves and their parent. They also need parents' marriage date. I rarely have a student who knows this date off the top of their head, or a divorce date, and then the number of years of residency in Virginia for both the student and the parent. In addition, there is a lot of financial information that has to be used to complete the FAFSA. So your students will be the class of 2022. Their first year in college will be fall of 2022. So we always go 2 years back for taxes. And for your students, we will be using tax year 2020. And we'll need your W-2 forms, the forms that you get in January that show your wages. You're going to need your federal tax return forms. And if you're a military family, you'll need the LES for any month in 2020. We also need to know the amounts in your checking accounts, savings accounts, any other assets accounts like stocks or other investments, real estate investments, not your home, any investment records that you might have. In addition, the amount in your college savings plans, if you have a 529 or a prepaid college account, we would need to know that for all of your children, not just the child going to college. FAFSA asks you to report all of the 529s that you have. The reason for that is because they don't want families shifting money back and forth between the kids to make what a parent might view as a stronger application for aid. All right, so the IRS data retrieval tool, if you are able to use it, will be your best friend. I highly recommend it if you are able to use it, and there's a couple reasons for that. It's very accurate. It transfers everything from your taxes directly into the form. It saves time. It saves you from possibly making some mistakes. And if you do get selected for verification by the college, you won't have to order a tax transcript, which is a whole nother step. You will not be able to use the IRS data retrieval tool if you don't have an FSA ID, or if you filed as married, filing separately, or head of household. If you filed married, filed jointly, you should be able to use it. Or if you filed an amended tax return, if you filed a Puerto Rican or foreign tax return, or if you changed your marital status after the end of tax year 2020. And just keep in mind that if you file your taxes electronically, that data will be available in the data retrieval tool 2 weeks within filing. But if you use paper to file, it won't be available for 6 to 8 weeks. And if you can't use the IRS data retrieval tool, I would go ahead and order the tax returns transcript. On the College Access website, we have a link that shows you how to do that. So you are going to need to report assets on the FAFSA. What you would need to include is any cash, checking, savings, CDs, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate that is only other than the home you live in. If you had an investment property or a vacation home, all of your 529 plans, Coverdell savings accounts, or any other qualified education plans, your UGMA and UTMA accounts, stock options, and any installment or land sale contracts. You do not need to include the equity in your personal residence, the value of any life insurance, or the value of your retirement accounts. They do not want you to include those as assets. So once you enter all of the information in the form, you're going to sign and submit it electronically, or you can also sign it manually and use snail mail to send it in. If you don't have an FSA ID, you will need to do that. You're going to get a confirmation page that shows your expected family contribution, which we call the EFC. If you have more than one student who needs FAFSA, for instance, if this is maybe your younger child and you have another child in college, this is the only time you will get the opportunity to transfer your information into another FAFSA. After that screen, it goes away. If you have twins, if you have triplets, make sure you are aware to look for the ability to click on the link to transfer your information into another FAFSA form. So the EFC, it's a federal calculation, and essentially think of FAFSA as a tool the college uses to help create your financial aid plan. It's really based on the income of both parents and student. There's a parent financial section and a student financial section because many students have income. They'll look at the assets of both you and your student. the number in the household is used in the formula. The number you have in college is also used in the formula. They'll look at your marital status, the dependency status of your student, and the age of the oldest parent, because they don't want to penalize people who are closer to retirement when they do this calculation. This number is the amount they expect you to be able to pay for 1 year of college costs. So the schools that you put in your FAFSA will receive this EFC, this expected family contribution, and they will use that to create your financial aid package. So the student aid report is going to, it doesn't arrive right away. You get an estimate when you submit, but in 3 to 5 days, you'll get the formal student aid report. You should check it and make sure there aren't any mistakes, see if there's any corrections that need to happen. And you're going to see a number that has lots of zeros in the front of it. It says EFC. Just if you can just eliminate the zeros on the left side of the number, and then you'll see the dollar figure for your expected family contribution. You want to keep this on hand for your reference. Some students will get selected for verification. Now, earlier I had mentioned that students should create their own email for college. This is exactly the reason they're going to want to make sure that they activate notifications or badge notifications on their email. They may get an email that this is required, and they cannot complete your financial aid package without you completing this verification step. So at some schools, it's random. At other schools, they do 100% verification of all of the applicants. If you see an asterisk next to your EFC on that student aid report, there's a good chance that you are going to be asked for some more documents to verify your submission. It might be checking account statements or savings account statements. It's really up to the school, and each school does require sort of their own list of things, and they each have their own procedures for how you're going to submit it. So it's very important. It's something that the student needs to be aware might need to take place, and they really need to keep an eye out for that email. All right, so we've gotten a little further than I thought we were. I'm just going to check my time. We have time to keep going. So financial aid awards, how do colleges determine those awards? So each college has something called the cost of attendance. And for each school, it will be their tuition and their fees. Sometimes schools will have a certain fee for a major or for maybe being a first-year student. I think that some schools even had COVID fees for the cleaning this year. So that is one thing that will vary from school to school. Room and board is the housing that is often required for first-year students if they're at a four-year university. It would be their dorm room. There's a range of costs for those. Some dorms are more expensive than others at some schools. And board is usually their meal plan. And that varies on how many meals they're going to get per week. And so there's also a range for board. Their books and supplies will vary. It's an estimate that the school will give you. Many students rent books to save money, or they get used books to bring that number down. Supplies can be anything from something you might use in a science lab to the soldering iron you might use if you're taking a jewelry making class. Travel, you have to get to and from school. If you're commuting, you would need to include thinking about a car if you were not on a public transportation system. And then personal expenses are just going to be, buying toothpaste at CVS, or if you wanted to share a pizza with your friends, it can be a variety of things. So each college will have their own cost of attendance. What they do is take the cost of attendance and they subtract your expected family contribution from that number, and that determines your financial need. Some schools will meet full financial need, and your counselors have a list of those schools. Usually there's some sort of a gap, and it's that gap where sometimes parents have to fill in or students have to fill in with loans or seek out scholarships or seek out grants to make up the difference. There's something called the net price calculator on a college's website. It's on the financial aid page. I recommend that all students do this for every school they're applying for. I had a student last spring who contacted me in June. He had gotten into his dream school, which was the University of Virginia, and he'd gotten in and then he put away all of his college things. He felt done. He was exhausted. He wanted to have some senior fun. And he realized that his financial aid award was not what he expected. I think he assumed that because his grades were high, that he would be given some merit related to it. The Virginia colleges are not all that generous sometimes with some of those merit aids. It really varies from student to student. And he called me in June and said, what scholarships can I apply to? And it kind of broke my heart at that point. All of the scholarships really were closed at that point. And we were talking about options for him. And, one option was for him to maybe take a gap year and work. So we don't want any surprises. So please use that net price calculator on the college website to see if that college is affordable for your student. We talk about colleges that are meets, but really it has to meet not only what you're looking to major in and if it's a good fit for you academically and socially, but it has to be a financial fit as well. So I just want to kind of make sure that it's really up to your student to go ahead and do this research and really to not make any assumptions about what sorts of awards they might get. It's really just best to arm yourself with information. All right, so just to give you an idea of how the cost of attendance at some schools can vary, these are some numbers from this year for 4 of our public universities in the state of Virginia. And you can see even within the state that there's a pretty wide range. So one of the more expensive schools is University of Virginia, as is William and Mary. And Longwood is one of the more affordable schools, as is James Madison. The least expensive option is the Northern Virginia Community College. We have many, many students who not only some go there and get 2-year degrees, but so many go there and get their 2-year degree and then go on to a 4-year school, and they save a lot of money doing so. There's a program called Advance that your students can take advantage of there. Your counselors know all about it. It can be a really good option for saving money for students. We also have private schools in the state of Virginia, as well as some that are out of state. And you can see on their sticker price, it's pretty high. Now, some of these schools will be pretty generous, or it will appear that they're generous with some merit aid, but you're still, even after some of the merit awards, it still leaves a pretty hefty price tag. So again, use the net price calculator on their websites. And then there's also some great public school options that are in other states. Some of them have agreements with the state of Virginia in terms of some discounts. West Virginia University, you can actually go right on their webpage and look at their merit chart. If you have a student who has strong grades or strong test scores, you'll be able to see right up front the sort of discounts you can get off of the tuition at that school. All right. If you have a student applying to one of these 6 schools in the state of Virginia, in addition to FAFSA, they will need to complete the CSS profile. It's through the College Board, and they just changed the pricing so that if you earn $100,000 or less, it is free for you to complete the CSS profile. Otherwise, there is a fee for the first report and then a discounted fee for each additional report. How do you know if your college requires the CSS profile? You can go to the College Board site, and if you just go into the little search bar there, just put in CSS profile, the page will come right up, it's purple, and you can actually just click on the list of schools that require it, and you can sort it by state, and it's a very detailed form. A lot of these colleges use it to reward to award institutional aid, college-specific aid. So just be careful that your students are really checking out the financial aid website for each school they're applying to, and make sure they have full knowledge about whether the school requires FAFSA or FAFSA and the CSS profile, and what those deadlines are for these forms. Not every school has the same deadline for FAFSA. FAFSA is open all year, but schools have certain deadlines. If you are really looking for merit aid, my understanding is that if you apply early action, you will have an opportunity at many schools to qualify for some merit aid. If you wait for regular decision, there aren't as many opportunities. If you think of financial aid as a big pot of money, the school gives out that money over the course of the year. That means you want to complete your financial aid forms in the fall, and I wouldn't wait. You don't have to do it on October 1st, but I would certainly think you should be getting all of your materials together within a few weeks of that date, and planning when you're going to complete it, and understand what that date is at the schools your student is applying to. All right, some colleges have their own financial aid form, and again, you will see that on their financial aid website. One of the things I recommend to students is to use this opportunity to practice their phone call skills. If they have a question, if they're not sure, the people at the financial aid offices at the colleges are extremely nice. They're used to students asking questions. They only want to help. It's really the best way is to just reach out to those offices directly to ask questions and get answers.
Bonnie, just giving you
okay. I think we're about to switch into our next one.
Yeah, I've given you about a 3-minute warning. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to use, instead of going through the rest of this presentation, I just kind of want to talk about some of the important things. I'm actually going to share with you. Let me go back and show that again. I want to show you the contact information for your financial aid champion at your school. Here we go. Okay, so these, if you go to College Access Fairfax, our website, you'll get lots of information. We have videos on scholarships. We have videos on FAFSA line by line. We have several presentations coming up. We have some regional presentations we're doing as well. They're on Paying for College, which covers many of the things we discussed tonight. There's one where we literally go by the FAFSA page by page. We have another full scholarship presentation. And plus, you really can get a one-on-one appointment with us very easily. You can either go to appointments at College Access, or you can go ahead and contact Kristen Mayhew directly through her FCPS email. We also have some social media accounts down here. If you want to follow us on social media, we put some reminders in there and let you know about presentations that we have coming up. So we are happy to work with you. We love to work one-on-one with your students. The FAFSA form really does belong to your student. The parent is there to provide information and to give guidance, but it's one of the first things they do that we call adulting, where they have the responsibility for this. So we are really eager to work with your students and help them. And if you are a student, I couldn't tell from there if I have parents or students, but we are really happy to offer whatever help we can. I was a teacher. I love working with students. So if you have any questions after tonight, just send me an email. I guess I didn't put my own email in here, but I'm at bdhorowitz@fcps.edu. So I think we are probably going to go ahead and go back to the other room now that I'm looking at the time. So thanks for joining me tonight.
All right, thank you so much, Bonnie. So at this time, you can, if you click on the breakout rooms down at the bottom of the screen there, you are able to go to the second breakout group. You can move about however you'd like to. So thank you for being here, and we'll see you back in the main room just before 8 o'clock.
Would you like me to close my room or stay here?
No, so stay here, and then
Okay,
the next group will come in and we'll do the whole thing all over again.
great.